Picture this. You're enjoying something perfectly legal. Maybe it's a product you bought at the store, a hobby you've had for years, or just a normal part of everyday life. Then one day, someone comes along and ruins it for everyone. Not just ruins it, they take it so absurdly far that the government has no choice but to step in and ban the whole thing. Today, we're diving into the wild stories of ordinary freedoms that vanished because one person couldn't help themselves. From bathroom cleaners to laser pointers, from energy drinks to fireworks, these are the stories of the people who took things too far and changed the law forever. Let's get into it. Absinthe. For over a century, absinthe was the drink of choice for artists, writers, and bohemians across Europe and America. This bright green spirit, made with wormwood and anise, was legal, popular, and absolutely everywhere by the late 1800s. Van Gogh drank it, Oscar Wilde praised it. It was the craft cocktail of its era. So what happened? Enter Jean Lamfray, a Swiss farmer who, in 1905, committed one of the most infamous crimes in Swiss history. After drinking 2 glasses of absinthe, along with wine, brandy, and several other spirits throughout the day, Lamfray murdered his pregnant wife and 2 daughters in a drunken rage. The newspapers latched onto the absinthe. Never mind the massive quantities of other alcohol he'd consumed. Never mind his known alcoholism. The headlines screamed, "Absinthe madness and the Green Fairy's deadly curse." The public ate it up. Moral panic swept across Europe like wildfire. Within months, Switzerland banned absinthe completely. The panic spread to France, Belgium, and eventually to America. By 1915, absinthe was illegal in the United States and most of Europe. The ban lasted for nearly a century in many places. The irony? Modern science has shown that absinthe, when consumed normally, is no more dangerous than any other spirit. The supposed psychoactive chemical in wormwood, fugone, exists in such small quantities it's basically harmless. But one tragic crime, fueled more by tabloid hysteria than fact, ended the absinthe era for generations. Lawn darts. Remember lawn darts? Those weighted metal-tipped missiles you toss across the yard at plastic rings? For decades, they were a backyard staple at barbecues and family gatherings across America. Sure, they were dangerous, but so were a lot of things, and people were trusted to use common sense. Then came the summer of 1987. A 7-year-old girl named Michelle Snow was playing in her backyard in California when a lawn dart sailed over the fence from a neighbor's yard. It struck her in the head, penetrating her skull. 3 days later, she died from her injuries. Her father, David Snow, was devastated, but instead of just grieving, he channeled his pain into action. He launched a relentless campaign to ban lawn darts nationwide. He testified before Congress, shared his daughter's story with anyone who would listen, and pushed back against the toy industry's claims that lawn darts were safe when used properly. The statistics backed him up. It turned out that lawn darts had sent over 6,000 people to emergency rooms in just an 8-year period, with most victims being children. Many suffered severe head injuries, some were permanently disabled. By December 1988, the Consumer Product Safety Commission banned the sale of lawn darts in the United States. Not just restricted them, completely banned them. You couldn't manufacture them, import them, or sell them. The ban remains in effect today. One father's grief and determination ended an entire product category. Novo and CEO, pseudoephedrine. For most of modern history, if you had a cold, you could walk into any pharmacy and grab a box of Sudafed off the shelf. Pseudoephedrine, the active ingredient, was one of the best decongestants available. No prescription needed, no questions asked. Then came the methamphetamine epidemic. Pseudoephedrine, it turns out, is a key ingredient in making meth. And in the 1990s and early 2000s, drug manufacturers figured out they could buy massive quantities of cold medicine and cook it into meth in makeshift labs. We're talking about people buying hundreds of boxes at a time from multiple stores. But one case in particular highlighted just how out of control things had gotten. In 2005, an Indiana man named William Leonard Pickard was convicted of running one of the largest meth operations in American history. His operation was buying pseudoephedrine in bulk quantities that were absolutely staggering, enough to produce millions of dollars worth of methamphetamine. The authorities realized they had a massive problem. Meth labs were popping up everywhere, causing explosions, contaminating homes, and fueling addiction rates that were spiraling out of control. Something had to be done. Congress passed the Combat Methamphetamine Epidemic Act in 2005. Suddenly, pseudoephedrine products were moved behind the pharmacy counter. You had to show ID, sign a logbook, and were limited in how much you could buy. Many states went even further, requiring prescriptions. So now, when you have a stuffy nose, you have to wait in line at the pharmacy, show your driver's license, and get logged into a federal database, all because drug manufacturers ruined it for everyone. Fireworks in Iceland. Iceland had a pretty relaxed attitude toward fireworks for most of its modern history. People could buy them, set them off for celebrations, and generally enjoy them without too much government interference. It was tradition, especially around New Year's Eve. Then, in the 1980s, things started getting out of hand. The problem wasn't one specific incident, it was cumulative. But the breaking point came when injuries from fireworks skyrocketed. People were losing fingers, suffering severe burns, and causing property damage. Emergency rooms were overwhelmed every holiday season, but the final straw involved birds. Iceland is home to massive populations of seabirds, including puffins, who nest in the area. The constant explosions from fireworks were causing these birds to abandon their nests in panic, leaving eggs and chicks to die. Conservationists were furious. In 1999, Iceland passed some of the strictest fireworks laws in the developed world. Private citizens can no longer buy or use fireworks freely. Instead, the Icelandic search and rescue teams hold official fireworks displays, and people are encouraged to attend those instead. The irony is that New Year's Eve is still a huge fireworks celebration in Iceland, but now it's controlled, organized, and monitored. The days of backyard fireworks freedom are gone forever. Ephedra supplements. In the 1990s and early 2000s, ephedra was the miracle supplement for weight loss and energy. You could find it in every health food store, gas station, and online retailer. It was marketed as natural, safe, and effective. Millions of Americans took it daily, but ephedra had a dark side. It was essentially a stimulant that raised heart rate and blood pressure. For most people, the effects were mild, but for some, it was deadly. The case that changed everything involved a 23-year-old Baltimore Orioles pitcher named Steve Bechler. In February 2003, during spring training in Florida, Bechler collapsed on the field during conditioning drills. He was rushed to the hospital, where his body temperature reached 108 degrees. He died the next day from multiple organ failure. The autopsy revealed that Bechler had ephedra in his system. He'd been taking it to lose weight and boost his energy. The medical examiner concluded that ephedra was a significant contributing factor to his death. The media firestorm was immediate. Here was a young, healthy professional athlete who died in part because of a supplement you could buy at a corner store. The public outrage was massive. Bechler's widow filed a wrongful death lawsuit. Congress held hearings. It turned out that ephedra had been linked to over 150 deaths and thousands of adverse events. The FDA had been monitoring it for years, but faced pushback from the supplement industry. In 2004, the FDA banned ephedra-containing dietary supplements. It was one of the rare times the agency took such aggressive action against the supplement. The ban stands today. One tragic death on a baseball field ended the ephedra era. Selling mercury. For most of human history, you could just buy mercury, not in huge quantities necessarily, but it was available. Schools used it in science experiments. Thermometers and barometers contained it. You could even find it in some folk remedies and cosmetics. Then people started realizing just how incredibly toxic mercury is. But the case that really drove the point home involved a chemistry enthusiast named Karen Vetterhahn. In 1996, Vetterhahn, a professor at Dartmouth College and an expert in toxic metals, was working with dimethylmercury in her lab. A single drop, less than a milliliter, landed on her latex glove. She thought nothing of it. She was wearing protective equipment. The glove seemed intact. But dimethylmercury penetrates latex in seconds. Within months, she started experiencing symptoms: loss of balance, slurred speech, vision problems. By the time doctors figured out what had happened, it was too late. Mercury had saturated her brain and nervous system. She fell into a coma and died less than a year after the exposure at age 48. Her death sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Here was an expert who took precautions and still died from a tiny amount of exposure. The incident led to sweeping changes in how labs handle mercury and what protective equipment is required. On the consumer side, mercury thermometers were phased out and eventually banned in many places. Mercury switches in products were eliminated. The sale of elemental mercury to the general public became heavily restricted or outright illegal in many jurisdictions. Today, if you break an old mercury thermometer, you're supposed to call a hazmat team. That's how far the pendulum swung. March. High-powered laser pointers. In the early 2000s, laser pointers were getting more and more powerful. What started as a simple presentation tool evolved into devices that could light matches, pop balloons, and reach incredible distances. You could buy them online from overseas sellers for cheap. People started having fun with them, maybe too much fun. The breaking point came when people started pointing these high-powered lasers at aircraft. It sounds like a harmless prank, but when a laser beam hits a cockpit, it creates a blinding effect that can disorient pilots during critical phases of flight like takeoff and landing. In 2014, a California man named Sergio Rodriguez aimed a laser pointer at a police helicopter and a hospital helicopter, striking both aircraft multiple times. The pilots reported being temporarily blinded and disoriented. Rodriguez thought it was funny until federal agents showed up at his door. He became one of the first people prosecuted under strict new federal laws targeting laser strikes on aircraft. He was sentenced to 14 years in prison, 14 years for pointing a laser. That case, along with thousands of other reported incidents, led to a massive crackdown. The FDA and FAA tightened regulations on laser pointer sales. Importing high-powered laser pointers became difficult or illegal. Penalties for pointing lasers at aircraft became severe federal crimes. What was once a fun gadget from the internet became a controlled item that could land you in federal prison. Alcoholic energy drinks. In the late 2000s, a new product hit the market that seemed like the perfect party beverage: alcoholic energy drinks. Brands like Four Loko combined high alcohol content with caffeine and other stimulants. One can add as much alcohol as 4 or 5 beers, plus the caffeine equivalent of several cups of coffee. College students loved them. They were cheap, potent, and kept you wired while getting you drunk. What could go wrong? A lot, apparently. The crisis point came in October 2010 when 9 students at Central Washington University were hospitalized after drinking Four Loko at a house party. Their blood alcohol levels were dangerously high, some over 0.3%, and they showed signs of severe alcohol poisoning. Several students nearly died, but this wasn't an isolated incident. Across the country, emergency rooms were seeing a surge in extreme alcohol poisoning cases, especially among young people. The combination of alcohol and caffeine was particularly dangerous because the caffeine masked how drunk people felt, leading them to drink far more than they normally would. The media dubbed Four Loko blackout in a can and liquid cocaine. States started banning it. The FDA sent warning letters to manufacturers. Within weeks, the makers of Four Loko and similar drinks reformulated their products to remove the caffeine and other stimulants. Some states and cities banned the original formulation entirely. The original Four Loko, the one that sent those college students to the hospital, disappeared from shelves nationwide, all because people couldn't handle the combination responsibly, and companies kept making them stronger and stronger. Chloroform. There was a time when you could walk into a pharmacy and buy chloroform. It was used as a solvent, a cleaning agent, and even in some medicinal preparations. It was just another chemical available to the public. Of course, chloroform is also famous for something else: knocking people unconscious. And while that's been dramatized in movies and TV shows, it's based on real science. Chloroform is a potent anesthetic. The problem started when people began using chloroform for decidedly non-medical purposes. Robberies, assaults, and worse, criminals realized they had easy access to a knockout drug. One of the most notorious cases involved a string of robberies in the early 20th century, where thieves would soak a rag in chloroform and use it to incapacitate victims before robbing them. These chloroform robberies became so common that newspapers regularly reported on them, causing public panic. But beyond crime, chloroform also caused accidental deaths. People using it as a solvent or experimenting with it would suffer respiratory failure or cardiac arrest. The line between unconscious and dead with chloroform is dangerously thin. By the mid-20th century, regulations tightened significantly. Chloroform was removed from consumer products and restricted to industrial and research applications. Today, you need licenses and legitimate reasons to purchase it, and it's heavily monitored. What was once a common household chemical became controlled because too many people used it to hurt others or themselves. So there you have it. 10 things that were perfectly legal until someone pushed them way too far. Drinks that inspired moral panic, toys that killed, supplements that stopped hearts, lasers that blinded pilots. Each one is a reminder that freedom comes with responsibility, and when enough people ignore that responsibility, the government steps in and takes that freedom away. The craziest part? Most of these bans probably saved lives, but they also took away options for everyone else who was using these things responsibly. That's the trade-off we make as a society. What other everyday things do you think might get banned next? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss future content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.